He was a ghost, a presence in the shadows nobody wanted to see. Yet the footprints he left behind were impossible to ignore. And yet, for years, he slipped through the cracks of a city too busy to notice the unraveling nightmare beneath its streets. But what if the truth was darker than anyone dared imagine? What if the final capture was only the beginning of something far more sinister? The rain came down in thick, relentless sheets over the streets of Milwaukee that night. The streetlights blurred behind the wet glass of cracked windows, their orange glow flickering like the heartbeat of a city on edge. In the early hours, when most were tucked away in the false safety of sleep, the city's darker rhythms began to pulse. At the edge of a quiet neighborhood, nestled among aging brick buildings and chain-link fences, a flickering neon sign buzzed above a diner long past its prime. Inside, a few insomniacs nursed bitter coffee, their faces tired and worn. But behind the faded wallpaper and chipped linoleum, a story was about to unfold, one that would haunt this city for years to come. To the outside world, he was a man like any other, unassuming, polite, sometimes even charming. A 34-year-old mechanic with a quiet job at a local garage, a faded denim jacket always hanging on his frame, and a slow smile that never quite reached his eyes. Nobody in his circle of acquaintances suspected the darkness that simmered beneath the surface. His neighbors called him Quiet Mike, the guy who kept to himself, who never made waves. He spent long nights tinkering with engines, listening to classic rock on his battered radio, and occasionally taking long walks under the pale glow of streetlights. But those walks were rarely aimless. On September 14, 1998, a 21-year-old woman named Lisa Carmichael vanished without a trace. She was last seen leaving a late shift at a local supermarket, her red hair pulled into a loose ponytail, clutching her worn canvas bag. Police chalked it up at first to a runaway, a bad relationship, a night out gone wrong, assumptions made too often and too quickly. But the silence that followed was deafening. Days later, Lisa's body was found in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community. The stark reality that someone was hunting in the shadows had finally come into terrifying focus. Forensic reports showed Lisa had been strangled, methodically, silently, as if the killer wanted to feel the life drain away beneath his hands. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of forced entry, only a chilling stillness that lingered in the air like a heavy fog. The killer took a grim pleasure in the control, the cold precision with which he extinguished life. For Michael Reynolds, killing was more than a compulsion. It was a dark dance, a game of power played out in whispers and shadows. He relished the fear, the moment when the victim's breath hitched, eyes wide with disbelief. And when the final pulse slowed, he would sit quietly beside the still form, savoring the silence that followed. A silence that only he could break. Lisa was only the beginning. In the months that followed, 2 more women disappeared from the city's forgotten corners, both found days later in similar conditions. Strangulation? Staged scenes meant to taunt, calling out to the police like a twisted signature. Despite the growing fear, Michael moved unseen. In the diner that night, Detective Sarah Holden sipped her lukewarm coffee, eyes fixed on the rain streaking the window. She had been assigned the Carmichael case weeks earlier, a tenacious woman known for her sharp instincts and relentless pursuit of justice. But even she struggled to piece together the fragments of a puzzle that didn't want to be solved. "Every time we think we're close," she muttered under her breath, "he slips away like smoke." Detective Holden had a theory. The killer wasn't a stranger to these women. His confidence suggested familiarity, someone who understood their routines, their fears. But the question was, who? At this point, if you're already hooked wondering who this shadowy figure is, why the city let him slip through for so long, and what dark secrets the final capture might reveal, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. And hey, if you have any theories on who Quiet Mike really is, drop them in the comments below. I love a good detective story. As the investigation deepened, a few strange clues surfaced. A scrap of fabric found near the second victim, an unfamiliar tire track outside the warehouse where Lisa was found, a witness report of a man seen lingering near the victims' workplaces. yet none led to a definitive arrest. Michael Reynolds watched the chaos he created with a detached satisfaction. Each victim was a message, a challenge wrapped in the cloak of his anonymity. In the quiet moments between killings, he returned to the empty rooms of his apartment. Walls covered in meticulous notes, maps with pins marking his victims, and photographs taped to the ceiling, each face frozen in time, each story a thread in the tapestry of his dark obsession. But there was one detail he guarded fiercely, a secret that, if discovered, would unravel everything. The city's unease grew. Parents kept their children close, the night air thick with whispered warnings. Yet Michael moved through it all like a ghost, untouchable, invisible. What was it about this man that made him so impossible to catch? And what would finally bring him to justice? Stick around, because we dive into the hunt. The tireless work of Detective Holden and her team, the breakthroughs, the dead ends, and the moments when the noose slowly began to tighten. You might want to get comfy for this one. And hey, if you're watching this with a friend, go ahead and tag them. Because true crime is better when you're not the only one losing sleep over it. In the game of shadows, the hunter often becomes the hunted, but the line between the two is razor thin. As the city's pulse quickened with fear, Detective Sarah Holden and her team plunged deeper into the abyss, chasing whispers, chasing ghosts. What they uncovered was a mind more cunning and fractured than anyone could have imagined, and the clock was ticking faster than ever. The fluorescent lights of the Milwaukee Police Department's cold briefing room flickered faintly, casting long shadows over a table cluttered with case files, photos, and half-drunk cups of coffee. Detective Sarah Holden leaned forward, scanning the worn-out evidence boards peppered with red strings, a web of connections and dead ends. Around her, a team of officers shared the weight of exhaustion and determination. The city's unrelenting chill seeped through the concrete walls, but the fire in their eyes burned hotter than the autumn wind outside. The victims, now 3 in total, had all been strangled in eerily similar ways. No weapon, no signs of violent struggle, just the merciless grip of hands that refused to loosen until life slipped away. The killer was precise, patient, and intimately familiar with the women's daily routines. But that familiarity was also his weakness, a key the detectives hoped to find. Enter Dr. Evelyn Marks, a seasoned criminal psychologist brought in to profile the killer. Her gaze was sharp, a mixture of clinical detachment and empathy, qualities necessary when trying to unravel the darkest corners of human minds. His killings aren't random, Dr. Marks said, flipping through victim profiles. He's seeking control, but there's also a ritualistic pattern. Each victim represents something, a connection to his past, his psyche. She paused, eyes narrowing, and he's escalating. As the weeks dragged on, the city's sense of security eroded. Women altered their routines, avoided certain neighborhoods, and traveled in groups when possible. Local media sensationalized the killings, dubbing the perpetrator the Milwaukee Strangler, a name that sent chills through every household. The investigators uncovered disturbing parallels to a cold case from over a decade ago, a series of unsolved strangulations in the same city, with the same methodical silence and lack of physical evidence. Could the current killer be a copycat? Or was this a long-sought predator resurfacing? Meanwhile, Michael Reynolds lived a dual existence. At work, he was the helpful mechanic, chatting about cars and sports, blending seamlessly with coworkers. But behind the grease-stained facade, his mind was a labyrinth of obsession and darkness. His apartment was a sanctuary of shadows. Maps with red pins marked places of significance. The victims' homes, their workplaces, the sites where bodies were discovered. Journal entries, written in a cramped scrawl, revealed his torment and twisted gratification. One entry read, "They never see me coming. I am the silence beneath their footsteps, the breath they don't feel until it's too late. I control the story. I decide the end." Despite the mounting evidence, the killer's careful planning nearly thwarted the police. For every lead followed, another vanished. Witnesses who thought they saw something memorable changed their stories under pressure, memories clouded by fear or confusion. In a near miss that rattled the department, a surveillance camera caught a blurry figure near the latest victims, workplace just hours before her disappearance. The grainy footage showed a man matching Michael's build and gait, but no clear facial features. Detective Holden stared at the screen, frustration etched on her face. "We're so close. He's sloppy in his precision, but just careful enough." The psychological profile deepened. Dr. Marks explained, "This man likely harbors deep-seated resentment toward women, possibly rooted in childhood trauma or abandonment. He exhibits traits of narcissism, combined with a need for validation through domination. His pleasure is in the moment of control, the final capture." Pause here. If you're already itching to unravel who this shadowy figure really is and what drives him, consider hitting the like button. It helps us keep diving into these dark stories with the depth they deserve. And hey, have you ever wondered what goes on inside the mind of a killer? Let me know your thoughts or questions below. We read every comment and love hearing from you. One of the most chilling discoveries was a near victim, a young woman who escaped after a struggle, leaving behind clues that finally ignited a break in the case. She described a man with unremarkable features but a cold, calculating stare, a methodical approach that made the difference between life and death. Using her testimony, detectives traced patterns in Michael's movements, his routes, his habits, his favorite haunts. It was a delicate dance. Too aggressive a pursuit could push him into hiding. Too slow, and more lives might be lost. The pressure mounted. The city was on edge, the media hungry for answers. Anonymous tips flooded the precinct. Some credible, many not. The strain was visible on every face in the department. Late one night, Detective Holden sat alone at her desk, poring over the evidence, fatigue threatening to steal her focus. A photo of Lisa Carmichael stared back at her, vibrant, alive, and gone. She whispered a promise she never spoke aloud. "I will find him." But Michael Reynolds was no ordinary killer. His duality was as much a mask as a weapon. Friends saw the genial Mike, co-workers trusted him, and neighbors barely noticed. It was in the quiet moments, alone with his demons, that the darkness revealed itself fully. He kept meticulous notes on each victim, cataloging their weaknesses, his mistakes, and the pleasure of each kill. His writings hinted at a deeper torment, a past he guarded fiercely, but one that could unravel everything if uncovered. And then, another discovery sent shockwaves through the investigation. A hidden journal, found in a dumpster near the river, contained cryptic entries suggesting the killer was planning his next move, and that he believed himself unstoppable. The city's terror crescendoed as another woman disappeared. The countdown had begun. How would the detectives close the gap? What cracks would emerge in Michael's carefully constructed facade? And how would a single mistake change everything? Join us where the pressure mounts and the hunt narrows. The near misses and close calls that almost let the killer slip away forever will unfold, and a shocking discovery will turn the investigation on its head. If you're following the story, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss a moment. And hey, do you think the police were missing something obvious? Let me know your theories below. Sharing this with a friend who loves true crime? Go ahead and send it their way. Misery loves company, after all. Another name added to the ledger, another life stolen in silence. But this time, the killer's shadow stretched further than ever before, and the cracks in his carefully built armor began to show. In the heart of Milwaukee, the city held its breath, waiting to see if justice would arrive before another victim fell into the abyss. The morning fog clung stubbornly to the cracked sidewalks of Milwaukee's west side, dampening the city's usual hum into a muted pulse. At dawn, a jogger's breath formed visible clouds as she rounded a bend near a desolate industrial park, a place where the city's past whispered through rusted machinery and shuttered warehouses. It was here, beneath an overpass where the shadows lingered longest, that a grim discovery shattered what little peace remained. Her name was Rebecca Lawson, a 27-year-old barista at a nearby cafe, known for her warm smile and love of jazz records. Rebecca was last seen closing the doors of the cafe late the previous evening, her plans to meet a friend abruptly canceled, a detail that seemed innocuous but would become hauntingly significant. Hours after the jogger stumbled upon Rebecca's body, the news spread like wildfire. the city's fragile sense of safety shattered once more. Forensic teams descended on the scene, meticulously combing for evidence beneath the cold gray concrete. The pattern was unmistakable: strangulation, silence, control. But this time, something was different. Unlike previous victims, Rebecca's body bore subtle signs of a struggle: faint bruises, a torn sleeve, evidence that she fought fiercely before succumbing. It was a jarring departure from the quiet compliance of the earlier killings. Detective Holden arrived just as the medical examiner finished her preliminary report. Her eyes lingered on Rebecca's photo taped to the evidence board, a stark reminder that the killer was evolving, becoming more desperate, more dangerous. Dr. Evelyn Marks, watching from the sidelines, turned to Holden with a grave expression. "This isn't just escalation," she said softly. "It's a crack in his control. When the ritual falters, so does his sense of power." The investigation accelerated. The team worked tirelessly to connect dots: surveillance footage, witness interviews, forensic evidence. A breakthrough came when a barista colleague recalled a regular customer who had taken an unusual interest in Rebecca, frequently asking questions about her schedule and habits. The customer was Michael Reynolds. His routine now under intense scrutiny, investigators discovered patterns in his movements. Late-night visits to the cafe, anonymous calls made from a payphone near the industrial park, and disturbing internet searches related to suffocation and control. Meanwhile, in his apartment, Michael's journals grew darker. Entries filled with frustration, obsession, and a mounting sense of invincibility. She fought. One passage read, "But in the end, control is absolute. The silence will return." Detective Holden and her team felt the noose tighten. Every step forward revealed new facets of Michael's twisted psyche. A man consumed by a need to dominate, yet haunted by shadows from a past he desperately tried to hide. Community fear reached a fever pitch. Local women organized walking groups, neighborhoods formed watch committees, and the police urged vigilance while promising swift justice. But the killer was still one step ahead. The team uncovered that Michael had recently taken up a second job at a local garage, giving him increased access to victims and blending further into the fabric of the city. A critical moment came when a tire track found near the latest crime scene was matched to a rare model of car, the very one Michael drove. For the first time, the police had a tangible lead. A surveillance camera captured Michael leaving the garage late at night, his face obscured by the hood of his jacket, but his gait unmistakable. With mounting evidence, the team prepared to make their move. But Michael, sensing the walls closing in, made a calculated misstep. A careless phone call, intercepted by police, revealing his location. If you're as captivated by this unfolding story as I am, hit that like button. The tension is building, and the chase is about to reach a critical turning point. And while you're at it, subscribe and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss the gripping climax coming. In the quiet before the storm, Detective Holden reflected on the cost. Lives lost, families shattered, a city scarred. She vowed that the final capture would not just be about justice, but about healing the wounds left behind. As night fell over Milwaukee, the city held its breath once more. Will the hunter become the hunted? Can the darkness be finally brought into the light? Stay with us, for where the pursuit turns urgent, mistakes become fatal, and the true face of evil is revealed. Tag a friend who loves to unravel mysteries and invite them to join the hunt. When the walls begin to close in, even the most meticulous mind can falter. The hunter senses the hunter's shadow creeping ever closer, and with each heartbeat, the silence grows louder. This is the moment when darkness is exposed, when the final capture is not just inevitable but necessary. But will it come in time? The city of Milwaukee braced under a relentless October rain, the skies bruised gray as if mourning the lives lost. Inside the precinct's war room, Detective Sarah Holden stood by the glowing maps and evidence boards, her eyes scanning the latest developments. Michael Reynolds was no longer just a suspect, he was the prime focus. The tire track matched to his car, witnesses placing him near multiple crime scenes. His recent anonymous calls traced to a payphone just blocks from the industrial park where Rebecca Lawson's body was found. The air was thick with anticipation. Months of tireless pursuit had led here to the cusp of justice. But the final act was never simple. In his small apartment, Michael sat hunched over a worn notebook. His hands trembled slightly, his breath shallow. The journal pages told a story of a man unraveling, the calculated calm giving way to obsession and fear. "They close in," he wrote, "but I am the silence. I will not be caught. The final dance is mine." His last victim's struggle haunted him, a reminder that control was not absolute. His growing recklessness was evident in his recent behavior. Late-night excursions, unexplained absences, and a nervous edge that friends could sense but never name. Meanwhile, Detective Holden and her team executed a carefully planned operation. Surveillance tightened, with plainclothes officers monitoring Michael's known haunts. At dawn on October 21st, a breakthrough came. Michael was spotted leaving his apartment in a hooded jacket, carrying a small duffel bag. His gait was quick, purposeful. A man on the move, aware that the walls were closing. Police followed at a discreet distance, watching as he entered an abandoned warehouse, a location chillingly similar to previous crime scenes. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with stale air and shadows. Broken glass crunched underfoot, and the distant hum of the city felt like a heartbeat outside the walls. Moments later, a frantic call came through the radio. Neighbors reported a scream, piercing and desperate. Officers swarmed the warehouse. Inside, they found a woman bound and gagged, alive but terrified. It was Lisa Grant, 24, a waitress who had vanished 2 nights before. Michael Reynolds had made a critical mistake. The woman's description led directly to his identification. The evidence was undeniable. Fibers matching his clothing, DNA samples, and his journal detailing every kill and escape. Confronted with the overwhelming evidence, Michael was arrested without incident. The calm demeanor of Quiet Mike shattered, revealing a man stripped bare by his own darkness. In custody, his silence was both chilling and telling. Detective Holden stood by as he was led away, the weight of justice finally settling over the city. In that moment, she would later reflect, it wasn't just about capturing a killer. It was about reclaiming the lives stolen, the families broken, and the fear that had gripped Milwaukee for too long. The trial that followed was harrowing. Testimonies from survivors like Lisa Grant, the grieving families, and the chilling insights of Dr. Evelyn Marks painted a picture of a man consumed by his own demons, a predator who hid in plain sight. But amidst the grief and horror, there was a fragile thread of hope. Justice, slow and imperfect, had been served. If you've been following this journey with us, take a moment to reflect, and if you haven't already, subscribe for more stories that illuminate the darkest corners of humanity with compassion and clarity. Share this story with someone who believes in the power of truth and resilience. As the final chapter unfolds, we will delve into Michael Reynolds' past, the psychological scars that shaped him, and the lasting impact his crimes left on Milwaukee. To understand the monster, sometimes you must first trace the fractures in the man. The wounds buried deep, the silence of childhood, and the slow descent into darkness. But even as the past unfolds, the echoes of suffering ripple forward, haunting survivors, shattering families, and challenging those who dared to confront the abyss. The sterile walls of the forensic psychiatrist's office were a world away from the gritty streets of Milwaukee. Yet for Dr. Evelyn Marks, it was here that the most crucial battles were fought. Battles within the human mind, battles to untangle a web of pain and pathology. Michael Reynolds sat across from her, his gaze fixed on a point somewhere beyond the room's peeling paint and faded wallpaper. The man who had eluded capture for months was now stripped of his anonymity, a fractured soul laid bare. Dr. Marks began the sessions with caution, knowing that true insight required patience. From the start, Michael's history unfolded in fractured snapshots. A childhood marked by neglect, a father absent by choice or circumstance, and a mother overwhelmed by her own struggles. Abuse whispered beneath the surface, a secret Michael never voiced but which etched itself deeply in his psyche. His teenage years were a crucible of isolation and anger. Bullied relentlessly at school, he retreated into himself, finding solace in silence and machines. Cars, radios, anything mechanical that obeyed clear rules unlike the chaos of human connection. The foundation of his pathology, Dr. Marks would later explain, was a profound disconnection. A man starved for control in a world that had offered him none. His killings were a distorted attempt to reclaim that control, to silence the chaos inside. The killings were not merely acts of violence but rituals. Dark ceremonies where Michael exercised dominion, where fear was his language and silence his prize. Yet, beneath the surface, there was also torment, an internal war between rage and remorse, control and chaos. For those left behind, the survivors, the families of victims, the wounds were raw and unrelenting. Lisa Grant, the woman who had escaped Michael's final grasp, struggled with nightmares and distrust. Her recovery was a testament to resilience, but also a stark reminder of trauma's lingering shadows. In a quiet therapy session, Lisa shared her story. "I don't remember much about those hours, just fragments. The cold concrete, the sound of his breath, the weight of silence pressing down. When the police found me, I felt broken. But each day, I fight to put the pieces back together. For me, for the others." The families of Lisa Carmichael, Rebecca Lawson, and the others faced an unthinkable grief. Their lives had been forever altered by a man they barely knew but who had wielded power over their worlds with devastating finality. At the community memorial, photographs of the victims were laid side by side, each telling a story cut short. Candles flickered against the chill October air, casting long shadows over faces etched with sorrow. Detective Sarah Holden, too, bore invisible scars. In the quiet moments after the trial, she admitted, "You carry the weight of every life lost, every moment you wish you could have done more. But sometimes, justice is the only light in the darkness." The city responded in kind. Neighborhood watch groups flourished, counseling centers opened their doors wider, and conversations about mental health and trauma became more urgent. Milwaukee's scars were deep, but so was its determination to heal. Yet, even as Michael Reynolds was sentenced to life behind bars, the questions lingered. Could this darkness have been stopped earlier? Were there warning signs missed? And what does it say about society when such evil can grow in silence? Dr. Marks reflected on the challenge. Understanding a killer's mind is not about excusing the crimes, but about preventing the next. It's a call to recognize trauma, to intervene, and to address the silent suffering before it manifests in horror. In this chapter of pain and reflection, there is also a call to action, a reminder that behind every statistic is a human story, and behind every silence, the potential for voices to be heard. If this story has moved you, please consider sharing it to raise awareness about trauma and mental health. And don't forget to subscribe for more narratives that dig deep into the complexities of human nature. The journey toward justice was not just about capture. It was about understanding, healing, and never forgetting. When the dust settled, the horror was greater than anyone dared imagine. What began as a handful of tragic deaths was only the surface of a dark abyss. A chilling revelation that Michael Reynolds was no ordinary killer, but a predator whose shadow had stretched over decades, claiming lives by the dozens. And in the wake of this truth, the city was left to confront a nightmare far beyond its worst fears. The courtroom was tense, the air heavy with anticipation and grief. Months of investigation and testimony had painted a grim picture, but the most harrowing revelations were yet to come. As the prosecution laid out evidence gathered in the aftermath of Michael Reynolds' arrest, a disturbing narrative unfolded, one that spanned years and crossed state lines. Forensic analysts, working tirelessly through mountains of cold case files, discovered patterns, DNA matches, signature strangulation methods, victim profiles that connected Michael to at least 50 unsolved disappearances and murders stretching back over a decade. The implications were staggering. Each victim was a story untold, a family left waiting, a life extinguished in silence. Detective Holden, who had devoted her career to this case, sat quietly in the gallery, the weight of these revelations pressing down like a physical force. "This man had been hiding in plain sight," she said later. "For years, the bodies piled up while we chased shadows. The city was blind to his existence, and we all paid the price. The victims ranged in age from their late teens to early 40s, scattered across neighborhoods and cities, their disappearances once thought unrelated. What linked them was the chilling signature, the silent strangulation, the careful staging of scenes, the calculated absence of evidence. Michael's journal, uncovered in a secret compartment of his apartment, was a grim ledger, meticulously documenting each victim, the date, location, and method. Entries revealed the twisted pleasure he derived from the act, the control, the silence, the finality. Yet, there were also entries that hinted at remorse, confusion, and a fractured mind trapped in cycles of compulsion and regret. One passage read, "They blur together now. Faces, names, but I remember their fear. It is mine as well. This dance cannot end until I am caught or I fade into nothing." The magnitude of his crimes sent shockwaves through law enforcement nationwide. Task forces were assembled, cold cases reopened, and families who had long mourned in silence found renewed hope for answers. The psychological toll on the survivors was profound. Lisa Grant, the lone survivor, grappled with the enormity of the truth. "How do you live knowing you escaped, but so many others didn't?" she asked in a quiet interview. "Every day, I carry their memory and the burden of what could have been." Community leaders organized vigils, support groups, and initiatives to honor the victims and promote awareness about violence against women. But the scars were deep and the healing slow. For Detective Holden and her team, the investigation transformed from a hunt for one man into a mission to give voice to the forgotten. Every lead was a step toward justice, every cold case a story to be told. The trial revealed disturbing details of Michael's methods, how he lured victims through casual encounters, preying on vulnerability and routine. His unassuming appearance had been his greatest weapon, the ability to blend into crowds, to be Quiet Mike, the man nobody suspected. Expert witnesses detailed his psychological profile, a man shaped by trauma, driven by compulsion, and skilled in deception. But beyond the clinical was the human cost. The lives cut short, the families shattered, and a city forever changed. In the courtroom, survivors and families spoke with raw honesty, their voices a powerful testament to resilience and remembrance. As the verdict was delivered, life without parole, the collective breath of the courtroom was released, a mixture of relief and sorrow. Yet, for many, the journey was far from over. Outside, the city grappled with questions. How could this have happened? Were there missed opportunities? And what could be done to prevent another shadow like Michael Reynolds from emerging? The legacy of his crimes became a catalyst for change. Improved reporting systems, greater community outreach, and intensified focus on mental health and trauma intervention. Detective Holden reflected, justice in this case was not just about punishment. It was about learning, evolving, and honoring the memories of those lost by building a safer future. If this story has struck a chord with you, please share it. Together, awareness can become a shield. And remember to subscribe to continue following this journey into the depths of true crime and human resilience. The nightmare of Michael Reynolds had ended, but its echoes lingered, a solemn reminder of the shadows that can exist even in the brightest cities. When the last page is turned on a story like Michael Reynolds, the echoes remain. In grieving families, in haunted survivors, and in a city forever changed. Justice may close the book, but healing writes a new chapter. And sometimes, the most important stories are those yet to be told. The courtroom emptied, leaving behind a silence heavy with finality. Michael Reynolds was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, a verdict that marked the end of a dark era for Milwaukee, but not the end of its scars. For the families of victims, the verdict was both a relief and a reminder of irreplaceable loss. In quiet homes and community centers, memorials blossomed, walls of photos, letters, and tokens of remembrance that celebrated the lives taken too soon. Lisa Grant, who had survived against impossible odds, became an advocate for survivors, speaking candidly about trauma, recovery, and resilience. Her voice, once silenced by fear, now carried hope. Detective Sarah Holden retired shortly after the trial, her legacy sealed as the woman who never gave up. In interviews, she reflected, "Justice is rarely perfect. It's messy and painful and often too late. But it's necessary for healing, for closure, and for the promise that we will do better." The city of Milwaukee, bruised but unbroken, embraced change. Initiatives to support mental health, violence prevention, and community safety gained momentum. Yet, some questions remained unanswered. Michael Reynolds had kept many secrets, and some shadows lingered in the cold files of unsolved cases. Could there be more victims? More stories lost in silence? Forensic teams continued their painstaking work, hoping to bring light to the darkest corners. As the sun rose over the city, it cast long shadows but also illuminated new paths forward. The story of Michael Reynolds is a stark reminder. Evil can wear 1,000 faces, often hiding behind the most ordinary masks. But humanity's strength lies in its refusal to look away. If this story has moved you, if it has made you think, feel, or question, please consider joining our community. Subscribe, share, and engage, because together, we keep the memories alive and fight for a safer tomorrow. Thank you for walking this difficult path with us. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay compassionate, and remember, every life matters.